But I'll tell you what, we did get some great quarterback moves early on in the off season, one of which, of course, including Carson Wentz heading from Philly to the Indianapolis Colts. And to help us sort of talk a bit about the projection for Carson Wentz moving forward, we're going to bring in our good friend, Evan Sidery, host of the Locked On Colts podcast. You can follow over on Locked On Colts. Evan, how you doing, brother?
Doing good, Ross. How you doing? Hey, Cody. How you doing?
Good. Welcome in. Obviously, happy Sunday, but we're talking about quarterbacks here today, and the team that you cover for the Locked On Colts podcast, they had a change of quarterback this offseason. Phillip Rivers, we know him. I think we all have a lot of respect for him. He retired. He's going on to coach high school football, and now enter Carson Wentz, and this is kind of the storyline we've been looking at now, and I want to ask you, kind of what is your thought so far since the offseason has played out as to how Carson Wentz will fit in with this Indianapolis Colts team this upcoming season?
I think it's going to be a very interesting fit, not only for the player, but also just the scheme fit themselves, because I think Frank Reich's kind of been hamstrung the last couple of years since Andrew Luck's been retiring. Outside of being able to have a quarterback that moves outside the pocket, some more motions outside the pocket to get some more extended plays. And Carson Wentz is going to be able to do that. We've heard rave reviews so far out of Colts camp, as at the mini camp so far, talking through really Wentz. It seems like a seamless transition for him with Frank Reich back in 2017, was his former offensive coordinator, as we all know, is an MVP candidate. Wentz really would have been MVP before he tore his ACL late in the season. And it seemed like they're really getting back in sync almost immediately. When you have a coach and a quarterback in sync this much, it really could be good results for the Colts. And I think with Wentz's ability, with his big arm and his ability to extend plays, we're probably going to get a little bit closer to what we saw in 2018 with Andrew Luck behind center. I don't know if it's going to be the same caliber quarterback. This will be a very similar playbook.
One of the biggest issues around Carson Wentz in Philly, if you talk to a Philadelphia Eagles fan at least, were the weapons that were around him. Can you give us a little bit of an evaluation for the weapons that the Colts are going to be able to put around him here in 2021, and whether or not there's still some work to be done there, or how are you feeling about it?
I'm feeling pretty good about the Colts' weapons. I would say T.Y. Hilton's taken a step or two back over the last couple of years. Not the same guy, but Michael Pittman Jr. and Paris Campbell, two guys the Colts are really banking on, young prospects to take leaps here in 2021. Pittman really came on the playoff game last year, had 100 yards receiving. He seems to be their WR1 moving forward. Carson Wentz loves those big bodies as well. He could be a guy who gets around 100 targets this year. And Paris Campbell with 6 foot, 4.31 speed in the slot, he's going to be a mismatch nightmare for Carson Wentz to utilize as a safety blanket. And you can't forget about Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. He was one of the best running backs in the NFL over the last second half of the season. I think with having Taylor back there, also Nyheim Hines and Marlon Mack, who they re-signed as a change of pace back, it's going to take a lot of pressure off Wentz's shoulders, where he's not got to be a hero. He can really just be a top 10, top 12 quarterback, and the Colts can be really steering the ship right toward a wild card or playoff berth.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because when we watched Wentz last year with Philadelphia, it looked like he was just trying to do everything because, supporting cast around him wasn't there from the running back position. The offensive line was a turnstile for him. I mean, it was like, who's going to be starting? Who's going to be out this week or that week? I mean, we saw Wentz take shot after shot, and so he tried to do too much. Now, I look at the Indianapolis Colts roster. You mentioned the weapons that they have, the running backs that they have to take that pressure off. Even on the defensive side of the ball, I feel like they've gotten better as well. But for you, do you feel like maybe a change of scenery for Carson Wentz might bode well for his confidence? Because I feel like coming into the season, I was skeptical as to whether or not his confidence could be repaired. I mean, obviously you've been able to cover the Colts up close and personal. What are the early reports coming out of, mini camp and things along the nature, OTA's phase 2 of the offseason program, about how he's commanding things?
Yeah, I think it's just a clean slate all around for Carson Wentz, where it seemed like the Philadelphia media, just that pressure in Philadelphia. We all know if you go into Philadelphia, you don't perform well, they could turn on you just in a quick second there. And Carson Wentz saw that in 2020, where everything went wrong for him. The fans turned on him. Everything kind of just went south for him. And I think mentally he kind of broke down a little bit. And he admitted to that at his press conference last month, I believe, talking through just the transition to Indy. And he's a Midwest guy. He's from North Dakota. His wife's from Kentucky. It seems like a place where he can really just reset and just kind of take a back seat, where the Indy media is not going to be just all over him 24/7. It's kind of more of a laid-back environment, the Midwest environment too, to get kind of back into the old familiar territory that we saw in college. I think from that standpoint, he just seems like he's just gleaming ear to ear. Like, he seems like a different Carson Wentz from what we saw in 2020, where he just seems so excited to get into a new, fresh start and in a place where, with Frank Reich at the helm, he feels that is most comfortable. He's mentioned him and Frank Reich almost like best friends, where when you have that kind of connection with your coach, it really does help out.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got for Carson Wentz here a connection with the coaching staff, weapons around him, a solid offensive line. What about over on the defensive side, which of course may not be on the field at the same time as the quarterback, but always ends up helping out the quarterback as they move forward? How are you feeling about the defense? Because there was a big focus, particularly on the defensive line for the Colts during this draft.
Yeah, if you guys were able to see my live reaction to the Quiddy Pay pick, it's an
Hmm.
absolute home run. It's one of the
Yeah.
best picks, I think, in the first round, just schematically. Anything more toward just Quiddy Pay's short-term and long-term development. Play next to DeForest Buckner. I mean, that's going to be an easy transition for him where he's not going to see double teams. He's not going to see much pressure. It's going to be a lot of teams focusing early and often on DeForest Buckner next to him in the middle. And you see Quiddy Pay on the outside. He's going to be able to have an easy transition where he could get 6 to 8 sacks right off the bat in his rookie year and really be set up for a really great year alongside Buckner long-term. But then you also look in the back end there with Darius Leonard, Bobby Okereke, linebacker, Kenny Moore, one of the most underrated slot corners in the NFL. And you also have Xavier Rhodes, who really seems like a perfect fit in this zone-heavy scheme from when he saw and win Minnesota. And then Julian Blackmon, one of more underrated young safeties in the NFL as well.
One of
I
my
really
favorites. One of my favorites, honestly.
no, he's a hard hitter. Like he's so fun to
Yeah.
watch, quite honestly. But when you see all these young guys coalescing together, you adding Quiddy Pay to the mix, Dio Dengbo, their second round pick out of Vanderbilt, this one Chris Bauer's in love with. He has the longest wingspan in the NFL. So it's really gonna be interesting to see how all these pieces gel together. But I think honestly they were missing just one element, and that was pass rush last year, and a little inconsistency in the back end, which I think is going to be helped out with the addition of Quiddy Pay. So if they were a
Mhm.
top 10 defense last year, if Quiddy Pay hits the ground running, this could be a top 5 defense in the NFL, in my opinion.
Well, and one thing I wanted to ask you too, kind of staying on the theme of projections. I've been taking a look at that division too in the AFC South. You have the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. They're still a young team going through a rebuild. The Tennessee Titans, in my opinion, are still a question mark at this point, because we saw in the NFL playoffs, if you could really take away Derrick Henry, you have a strong chance to win. And that's exactly what Baltimore did against him. Now, my thought, because we didn't get a chance to have you on the schedule release show here, how do you feel like the Colts stack up this upcoming season in that AFC South division against these teams?
Yeah, I think quite honestly, they're really set up well. I think Tennessee losing Arthur Smith is a really underrated loss this offseason. Not having that creativity for Ryan Tannehill and those weapons. I think they might take a little bit of a step back. Derrick Henry, you don't know when the wheels are kind of start to fall off a little bit. He's out over 500 carries the last couple of years. You have to see how he does there. But you have to wonder with that defense, just with Tennessee, they're very inconsistent. You have Carson Wentz coming in here, a mobile quarterback that Frank Reich has not had since Andrew Luck. I think it could be a lot of fun for this Colts offense this year with those weapons that I mentioned before, where I think you could see something along the lines of a sweep. I think they're going to sweep the Tennessee Titans this year. They play, I think, twice in the first 8 weeks. And Jacksonville's always tough in Jacksonville. I don't know why the Colts always seem to lose down there, but you have to think, quite honestly, that this could be a situation where the Colts could be undefeated in the division this year. I predicted that they could be 6-0 in the division this year. And I honestly think that could happen. I mean, unless Tennessee doesn't have a drop off due to Carson Wentz, or excuse me, due to Ryan Tannehill and Arthur Smith going to Atlanta, I really think this could be a situation where the Colts could be undefeated in the division this year.
I'm loving
I
it.
like it.
Evan absolutely killed it here with us today. Thank you so much for taking the time to come through. You can hear more from Evan every Monday through Friday over on the Locked On Colts podcast, wherever you get your podcast. We appreciate you coming through, buddy.
Appreciate it, guys.